been a challenging year for the housing market with high mortgage rates, steep prices that continue to go up, and low inventory. There's been a lot of pressure on both buyers and sellers. So what could a new year and a new president bring for the housing market? Here with her outlook, we've got Danielle Hale, who is the Realtor.com chief economist. Thanks so much for joining us here. So let's just start there. What does a new person sitting at the Resolute desk at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue mean for the housing market?
I think that's a great question. Thanks for having me, Brad. So we know we've not just got a new person at the desk at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. We've also got a new Congress, and both the Senate and the House are likely to be of the same party. So I think the administration and Congress have a pretty clear mandate from voters to get something done. And we do know that housing was a talking point on the campaign, that the Trump campaign recognized very much that we don't have enough houses. Housing, as a result, is too expensive. And so we need to bolster supply in order to help improve affordability in the housing market. He's got some proposals for how to do that. I think what will ultimately matter is how those proposals become policy. And for that, we're still playing the waiting game as we move into 2025.
You know, it's interesting in what we had heard on the campaign trails and bringing mortgage rates back down to 3%. It seems like that is unlikely to happen. But what is perhaps the most likely outcome of where we could see housing affordability moving towards once we do get a new Congress and then additionally a new President-elect Trump taking the office?
Yeah, so I don't think we're going to see mortgage rates move all the way back down to where they were over the last few years. Our expectation is that we'll see mortgage rates edge down to 6.2% by the end of 2025, and that'll mean an average mortgage rate of 6.3% across the year, because we expect home prices to continue to climb, but not as quickly as we saw in 2024. That means that those falling mortgage rates will basically help offset that gain in home prices, and monthly payments will be relatively flat. If we combine that with a healthy economic backdrop, which we expect, it means incomes go up, and we should see affordability improve very modestly for home shoppers in 2025.
And what about for people who are just waiting for the right time to actually list their homes? Are we anticipating a major shift in at least the mentality around what the timing is for listing their homes and what they would need to see in the propensity for buyers who are ready to come off the sidelines?
I still expect spring to be the peak season, but I do think as mortgage rates come down throughout the course of 2025, then we're likely to see some improved conditions in the second half of the year. But again, spring and summer is still going to be that peak home buying and selling season. Sellers are in some ways impacted by mortgage rates just like buyers, because many sellers have a low existing mortgage rate that kind of has kept them locked in place. As mortgage rates come down, that will help ease some of the pull of that lock-in effect. But that's going to be a really slow process. So it's going to be life events that drive selling decisions. People who've maybe put off selling, even though their home situation has changed, might be able to move forward in 2025. We expect to see inventory climb by 11.7%. That's not going to get us all the way back to pre-pandemic levels of inventory, but it is going to continue to chip away at that. And we're going to see likely the highest levels of inventory that we've seen since 2020 in the year ahead.
I see within your forecast, you're also expecting home prices to continue to rise in 2025, slightly lower pace here of 3.7%. And I wonder how much does regionality also play into that? People who are looking across affordability in regions, people who are looking across even weather and where they would be moving to in order to potentially offset what they've had in the back of their minds as a major deterrent for why they would purchase in one area or another.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So we've got kind of different factors pushing things along there. So in the South, we've seen inventory recover better, and so we expect to see somewhat weaker price performance in some markets in the South. Other markets in the South are going to see stronger price performance, where we've seen a lot of new construction go up, and so a shift of the share of homes that are selling that are existing versus new. So the South is going to be a big mixed bag. I'm talking about the South as well because you asked about weather risks, and we do know that the South has some substantial climate risk, especially the Southeast, along areas that are impacted by hurricanes. That information is available to home shoppers on sites like Realtor.com. So anyone who is considering those risks or making a home purchase in an area that maybe they're not familiar with should be sure to check out that information and make sure that they are informed about the risks and find out a little bit what that means. It can make it harder in some cases to get home insurance. You'll also want to consider getting flood insurance alongside your regular homeowner's insurance. So especially if you're moving to a different area that has different risks, it's worth exploring those. It's not just flood, but also wind and fire and heat and air quality risk information that is available on realtor.com and many other real estate websites. So it's never been easier to get informed, and I highly recommend that consumers do that.
Absolutely. Danielle, just one more while we have you here. As we think about the effective household tax rate, what are the biggest changes that home buyers and homeowners should be anticipating going into next year, given what we've heard along campaign trails going into the election, and now once we finally do see some, of course, anticipated movement within Washington, D.C.?
Well, I had hoped it was going to move earlier in the year. It sounds like now tax changes are going to happen later in 2025, which means they'll probably take effect in 2026 and not before then. But I do expect rates to at least stay the same and maybe improve for some brackets. I think there's been talk about the state and local tax deduction that could be impactful for certain pockets of the housing market, particularly in high cost areas. So it would be nice if that got done sooner, but I think we're going to have to wait a little bit longer to see some changes there.
Danielle, thanks so much for taking the time with us today. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.